dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's Monday again. It's Monday, but hey, we got a show today. So, fun times. What we're gonna be talking about today, a couple of different stories. We got, of course, Trump rally that happened over the weekend. We got Washington sex parties. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Wait. It's Washington sex parties, and it involves Madison Cawthorn. Uh-oh. Never mind. Not so interesting, but and as well as 60 and 70-year-olds. Super not interesting, but we'll talk about it anyway. We got MAGA truckers going home. We got Fox News versus Rick Scott. Interesting. And so, lots of fun. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene goes after Pete Buttigieg in probably one of the worst ways possible. So we're gonna get into it. We're getting into it. I cannot talk today. It's a Monday. I'm tired, but let's do it. We'll start out with Donald Trump. Does size matter? That's an interesting question. Former President Donald Trump is a bit salty over reports that his rallies just seem to not draw the big crowds anymore. Gone are the days that he was filling stadiums, and really kind of back to the times just, pretty much after he had been paying people to go to his rallies. In fact, there was a Trump rally that happened in Georgia on Saturday, which brought in some pretty low numbers, very sad, even leading to people like Eric Erickson, redundant name aside, making a good point, tweeting this out. The Trump turnout on a Saturday in Georgia was anemic. Ooh, anemic. That does not bode well for his slate of candidates. Of course, he was there trying to prop up people that are challenging the current governor, Brian Kemp. Now, he said, this is Eric Erickson's tweet still, pointing out that not all the people there were from Georgia or even able to vote. And Perdue and the other candidates had to foot the bill. Oof. Referencing, of course, David Perdue. So David Perdue is insane, a crazy, crazy far-right winger, and Donald Trump, of course, there. Also there, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But anyway, now, the former president's chief spokeswoman, however, was not happy about this. I'll get to her quote later, specifically responding to Eric Erickson's tweet. But first, a couple more fun comments. Greg Bluestein, a political reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said this: I've covered more than 24 Trump rallies around the nation. This is the smallest crowd I've seen at a rally of his in Georgia since he won the 2016 election. Significantly smaller than the crowd in Perry in September. Significantly smaller. Very, very tiny. Very, very small. Very small. Almost,
Beta!
Very, very, very small. I'm just saying.
Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
Okay. All right. Fun. Puns aside, let's go to more. In fact, I'm sorry. This is more. This is Stephen Fowler now, a reporter at Georgia Public Broadcasting, saying this: it's almost time for Trump to speak here in Georgia, and there's probably no more than 5,000 people, the smallest Trump rally I've ever covered here. And then he goes on as well to make the comparison to Perry in 2021, which was closer to 10,000 and nowhere close to 2020's 20 to 30,000 strong rallies. So understand that there has been a tapering off of interest in going to Trump rallies with the Republicans. In fact, here's what he said, and this is devastating. People kept leaving during Trump's speech. It's cold and windy, and there's not much enthusiasm. And shared a couple of photos as well of some empty stands. I'm going to show you that. So there's one. Looks like, at least for that back row, more porta potties than people. Fun. And of course, whatever conclusion you want to draw from that, the more, more toilets than people. Fun. The enthusiasm has gone limp. Thank you for our mod here at Splume85 for that comment. That's hilarious. All right, next picture here. All right, hey, we're looking a little bit better now. All right. So, still, not very good. Not very big. Very, very small. Very sad. A little limp. So now his team pushed back. As I mentioned, Liz Harrington went after Eric Erickson in response to his tweet. She says, 25K to 35K is anemic. Fake news. Yeah, she's right. 25 to 35K would not have been anemic. It's just too bad they didn't get near those numbers. Now, Trump himself trotted out that argument that the media is refusing to show the large crowds, as he has done before, because, of course, his statement, which is, funny enough, not put in Truth Social. It wasn't truthed out. Is that what they call them? They call them truths, but what happens when you put it out there? Is it a truth out? Is that what it is? Did you truth it out? Or I don't know. I don't understand the whole Truth Social thing, but nonetheless, this was not on Truth Social. This was a prepared statement, and it said this: we had a massive crowd last night in Georgia, but as usual, the fake news media absolutely refuses to show it. People are estimating 25,000 to 35,000 people, but our record so far is Texas, with 87,000 people, with 50,000 being turned away. This is really fun. Okay, but you're talking about the other places that, and yes, by the way, Trump had gotten large crowds before. Nobody's disputing that he has had large crowds turn out before. But we're not talking about before. We're talking about what's going on now, what happened in Georgia on Saturday. Not very many. But hey, look, talking about fun, right? Yes, it must be very fun just lying your ass off all the time. Because he literally cannot do it about the most ridiculous things. Nobody cares about the crowd size. Nobody cares. Honestly, the only reason I'm talking about it is because he's butthurt about it. That's the only interest that I garner from the story, is the fact that he's so upset. So upset over this. His feelings, very, very hurt, the fifis. Donald Trump's a complete baby. And so here's the thing. Here's the reason that people aren't turning out. They're bored. Even his own followers are bored because they hear the same thing. And that same thing, of course, is the reiteration of, I didn't lose the 2020 election. I won bigly. I didn't lose. That's what losers do. Donald Trump is not a loser. It was stolen from me. Election fraud. Here's what he said. Here's an actual quote. The truth is, I ran twice, I won twice, and I did much better the second time. Yeah, okay, yes, you did better the second time than you did the first time. You actually did get more votes than you did the time before. It just so happens that Joe Biden got more votes than you. So getting more votes than you did before, hey, oh, wow, look at that, I got more votes than I did before. Okay, and you still lost because the other person got more votes than you, about 7 million more. And it, by the way, he got them in key places because the last time Hillary Clinton got more votes, 3 million more, but not in the places that mattered thanks to our electoral college system. This time, Trump lost in the places, and I hate saying the places that mattered. In our system, it's messed up. It's not a direct democracy, and so you have this electoral college. You know the story, right? I shouldn't have to go over that again. And he got less electoral college votes than Joe Biden. Simple as that. Sad. But here's what he said. To cap it off, we may just have to do it again. So, look, hinting at running again, of course, I think we already know that he's planning on running again, or at least talking about it to continue, getting attention for it. But again, I don't think people really care. I don't think people care at all. In fact, a recent Politico Consult survey found, and again, going back to the reason they don't care is because he keeps talking about the election and not about the current issues. 64% of Americans believe that the Republican Party should just move on from the 2020 election. That's it. Quinnipiac also released a poll last month finding that 52% of Republicans said they agree with former Vice President Mike Pence over Trump on the former being able to overturn the election last January. And so, look, they're like, move on. No, you can't overturn the election. Move on already. Let's go. Let's go. Search interest in phrases on social media, as well as Google searches and things like that. For phrases like election fraud, have trended downward. Nobody cares. In fact, here's Charlie Black, a longtime Republican lobbyist, telling NBC News recently that said, quote, except for a small group, Republican voters don't care about 2020 anymore. If you look at Trump's polling among Republicans, it's all been going down all year. And the more he rants and raves about the election being stolen, the more it'll keep going down. If he didn't want to run again, he's got to shut that up and start talking about the future, but he's not. And look, he doesn't even have to start talking about the future. What he could do is just focus on the present. And trust me, I'm not trying to give him advice or anything like that. But okay, why not talk about what's going on right now? There's all sorts of different issues, okay? Back to that same Morning Consult poll that I referenced earlier. 2/3 of Americans said to believe that things in the country had pretty seriously gotten off on the wrong track. So that's 2/3. That's pretty sizable amount of people that are like, things aren't going so great under Democrats, right? People are concerned with inflation, corporate greed, just everyday dinner, kitchen table issues that have not been addressed by the Democratic Party. And so they don't give two shits about an old dude's ego when it takes $100 to fill up their truck because some corporate asshat decided he wanted another yacht. And now, if Donald Trump talked about those things, there would be more excitement. He would be doing better. And by the way, when he does actually, talk about those things sometimes, but always references, if I had been president still, and I am still president because I didn't lose the election, well, then immediately people turn right off because it's like, oh, here we go. He's talking about the election again. No, you got to have a consistent message, right? And again, it's not that Republicans wouldn't vote for Donald Trump if he did win the nomination. Yeah, they'd still vote for him because, once again, they believe that Democrats are evil. They're just not showing up for him anymore. They're just not excited about him anymore. And so they're bored. They're just bored. But Trump is obsessed with his ego. He's not going to let go. The guy is pure id. It's impossible for him to give up on this narrative because then that would mean that he admits that he lost. And, well, if you admit that you lose, what does that make you? What makes you a loser? I'm not a loser. I didn't lose. I couldn't have lost. His brain can't handle it. It just implodes. Now, there's a good and bad thing to this, to wrap it up. Now, the good thing is that it looks like he's going to keep fading himself into irrelevance due to this absolute obsession with the election. And again, if he becomes the nominee, there's just not going to be as much excitement on the Republican side. Not enough diehard supporters, and Biden might squeak through again. Now, the bad could be really bad for the country. Now, Trump could lose so much influence within the party that you have somebody else who has adopted the ideas that made Trump win the first time. A little fake populism, sounding a bit like a regular person. There are people that are just obsessed with the idea of like, oh, you understand, I really like this politician because I can have a beer with him because he sounds like a regular person. Well, that's the one thing Donald Trump did right. He sounds like a regular person, but at the same time, he also says insane things. So, but doing that fake populism. But the thing is, he'll, just like Donald Trump did, have everything he said drip with racism and xenophobia and hatred. But at the same time, be savvy, right? Be savvy enough to take over the Republican Party and, run his campaign in a way that could be a very weak Biden on the domestic front. And so, again, you have a smart person that uses all the things that Donald Trump did to get into power and leaves out the bad things that didn't work, i.e. not obsessed with his own ego, but wants to get power, but does it in a smart way. You see what I mean? And I think you know the kind of person I'm talking about, somebody like a Tucker Carlson. And so that's the nightmare scenario. All right. Anyway, let's move on. It's the thing about being a competent fascist. That's the scary part. Let's go to sex parties. Lighten it up a little, I guess. Fun. Or is it? Representative Madison Cawthorn recently talked about how, or I should say was upset, that people in Washington keep asking him to sex parties. Take a look.
The sexual perversion that goes on in Washington, I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, where the average age is probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life, I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, oh, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Or the fact that there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove addiction in our country, and then you watch them do a key bump of cocaine right in front of you, and it's like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah, no, you're right, Madison. This is wild, except that everybody knows that this already happens. By the way, look. Drugs and sex parties. Oh, okay, sex parties. Kind of interesting. Oh, but with 60, 70-year-old men, not so interesting. Oh, that actually sounds pretty terrible. But the whole entire idea of like being surprised that there's this debauchery going on in Washington, D.C. among very rich, powerful men, is that at all a surprise? Oh, I could have never imagined. I can't believe there's gambling in this establishment. No, of course there is. Are you completely naive? No. And by the way, I'm going to get to a couple of things here. One is, who asked him? Well, I've got some ideas on that. But first, my first question is, if somebody's doing drugs right in front of you, Madison Cawthorn, and asking you to do sex parties, well, then why don't you report that? Why don't you go to the police, DC police? I'm sure they would be very interested to find out who's doing drugs right in front of you, Madison Cawthorn. Why didn't you? Oh, maybe it's because you didn't want to be a narc. Is that it? All right, sure. I get it. But look, this is an open secret. The fact that you have politicians that are doing drugs and having orgies, sex parties in Washington, not surprising at all. And so, yes, look, I think it happens more on the Republican side than anywhere else. But hey, look, you've had Democrats certainly getting in trouble for at least drugs. I'd like to see some names, or at least a name that would be interesting. But look, speaking of drugs, by the way, and speaking of the authorities, do you think the authorities would even care? Not necessarily. I don't know, because here you have lots of politicians that have done drugs and got no jail time. For example, Barack Obama. Barack Obama, admitted, yeah, I smoked weed. And even there's some, I think, maybe rumors or allegations, or maybe an admission that he did a little bit of cocaine. Okay, sure. You also have, Bill Clinton. Oh, but Bill Clinton didn't inhale, by the way. He didn't inhale, so I guess it didn't count. You have George W. Bush, had a possible coke problem. So, look, you got people from both sides that do it, and it's unsurprisingly they don't go to prison because guess what? They're powerful. Just saying. They're okay. So now, what do I think it is? Obviously, it's Matt Gaetz. Come on. No, it has to be Matt Gaetz. For one, Madison Cawthorn doesn't hang out with Democrats, so it's very unlikely that a Democrat's going to come and ask Madison Cawthorn, hey, we got some hookers and blow, at our house. You want to come by? You want to come hang out? No, that's not something that a Democrat was going to ask Madison Cawthorn. Okay, so let's be honest about that. But it does sound like something that Matt Gaetz might. Again, they're kind of in the same QAnon MAGA insurrectionist crowd, which is hilarious because Matt Gaetz is alleged to have sex trafficked a 17-year-old. So, but anyway, the reason that I say Matt Gaetz is because there's alleged witnesses of Matt Gaetz having, or at least being at these kinds of parties. According to two women in attendance to one of these wild Florida parties, at least, Gaetz was partying along with a lot of local Florida Republicans. Partygoers would share drugs like ecstasy and cocaine. Some had sex, the reporters said, the witnesses said, adding that after some of the parties, there was money, possibly Venmo'd, to some attendees. Gaetz once said, like to discuss politics, but then behaved like a frat type party boy, sometimes taking pills that she believed were recreational drugs. Some of those parties happened to have been low-key affairs, the other woman said. Some took place in hotel suites at the end of alcohol-fueled political functions. Quote, no one ever wants to stop partying, stop drinking, once you've had a few glasses of champagne in you. So look, very likely, Matt Gaetz. Again, under investigation for doing just this. And Joel Greenberg, another person that's connected with Gaetz. That case seems pretty damning. Now, why Madison Cawthorn is talking about this, but not naming names is kind of interesting, right? It could be that Cawthorn is distancing himself away from Matt Gaetz because maybe the evidence, the investigation for Matt Gaetz getting a little too hot for him to be at least associated. But I don't know. I don't know. What I'm guessing is maybe we're going to find out sooner or later. And that will be very interesting. All right. Let's move on to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to be very, very confused. I'm going to show you a video here of her saying something very hateful and incorrect about former Mayor Pete Buttigieg and his husband. Take a look.
And you know what? Pete Buttigieg can take his electric vehicles and his bicycles, and he and his husband can stay out of our girls' bathrooms. Yep.
What? I'm sorry, but what is that? What does one thing have to do with the other? Why would he be in? Why would he be in the girls' bathroom? I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, wow. For one, casual transphobia, right? And I guess homophobia as well. I mean, look. Pete Buttigieg and his husband are gay. They're not transgender. And if you're, by the way, if you're transgender, you identify as a woman, well, then you should be able to use the bathroom that corresponds with your identity. Simple as that. And trans women are women. You know why? Because all you're doing is you're going there to pee. That's it. In fact, look, I'm starting to be a believer in gender neutral bathrooms. They should be a thing. Why? Because we're all in there for the same reason to go to the bathroom. You're just there to pee. So we get in, we get out. In fact, the real crime that goes on in the bathrooms is the amount of people who either do not flush or they don't wash their hands. Wash your fucking hands, you sick, perverted bastards. Not washing your hands. Worst thing you could ever do. Worst thing you could ever do. All right, anyway. Now, look, you could say Green is just just confused, or maybe she's a moron. No, well, yes, and also no. Look, there's a lot of ignorance about LGBTQ plus issues, right? Especially about the bathroom bill, where this is now like, or the bathroom issue, which is a Republican talking point. Now, here's the thing. There are people I think that are good people that get scared about predators, okay? And because you have people, I mean, look, you do have an issue with sexual assault. You do have an issue with rape culture. You do have an issue with women that get attacked, right? And sexually assaulted and things like that. And so it's understandable that women will get scared. And I'm talking mainly cisgendered women on this one. But as I'm going to show you or illustrate to you, there's also an issue with transgender women being attacked in bathrooms specifically. And so, look, that's an issue, right? But going back to cisgendered women for a minute, yes, you do have a legitimate fear. I'm not gonna call a woman who fears being sexually assaulted a bad person simply for being afraid, especially when there's so much misinformation. There's so many people out there that are pushing a narrative, a transphobic narrative against, trans people, and trying to elicit that fear of a very real possibility of sexual assault. Not from trans people, because trans people are the victims more often than anywhere else, right? Of sexual assault in the bathroom. Because trans people, trans women especially, are not predators. They are the victims. Let me give you the statistics here. In a 2015 US transgender survey, 47% of transgender people are sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetimes. That's disastrous. That same survey found out that 1 in 5 respondents who were incarcerated in jail, prison, or juvenile detention in the past year were sexually assaulted by facility staff during that time. 17% of respondents who stayed at one or more homeless shelters, because again, you have an issue with transgender youth being kicked out of their homes as a result of their parents. They were sexually assaulted at the shelter as a result of being transgender. Transgender people are also over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to experience violent victimization, including rape, sexual assault, aggravated or simple assault, according to a more recent 2021 study done by the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law. In addition, households with a transgender person had higher rates of property victimization than in cisgender households. And about half of all violent victimizations have not been reported to police, and yet transgender victims are as likely as cisgender victims to report violence to police, even though overall it's underreported. So look, none of this is to say that nobody cares, and I want to be very, very clear about this. Yes, people care about cisgender women being assaulted sexually. We do care about that. And the reason that I have to point that out is because there is a narrative coming from trans exclusionary women, aka people like J.K. Rowling, saying that, you don't care about cisgender women that are being attacked, and that's why you're going after us and trying to protect men in the bathroom, quote unquote. No, we're trying to protect all women. That includes trans women, because trans women are women, and as you can see from the statistics, are also victims of assaults in not only bathrooms, but in other places as well. And so that said, right, what does this have to do with Pete Buttigieg? This whole thing about transgender bathrooms, why is Pete Buttigieg involved as a gay man? Well, here's where it gets insidious. Or even more insidious, I should say. Because there's an old trope about gay men specifically being predators of children. Remember, she didn't say women's bathrooms. She says out of our girls' bathrooms, implying that Buttigieg and his husband are preying on children. So that is not only an old homophobic trope, but it also fits in with QAnon. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the QAnon congresswoman. And so that's what we have. We have this old trope. We've got the dog whistles to the QAnon fringe that are the mainstream of the Republican Party, unfortunately. And so, look, there's that. Now to go on, she further went after Leah Thomas, the transgender swimmer, who conservatives are obsessed with right now in the culture wars. I'm not going to show you that clip where she dead names and misgenders her in order to just be incredibly mean. But I really want to show you and just kind of illustrate the attacks against Pete Buttigieg, not really related to policy. Yes, she has some, policy related, I guess, complaints like, because, you're trying to get us off fossil fuels and all that stuff, which I think is a good thing. We should get off fossil fuels as much as possible. But for the culture war, it's basically her telegraphing that, yes, we are still coming after gay people. And understand, that's the Republican Party right now. I mean, if you thought the issue of gay people was settled after Obergefell, no, it's not. Their culture wars are coming after gay people again. They're going after Pete Buttigieg and his husband just for the fact that they're gay, and of course tying that all with QAnon, which QAnon, if you're not familiar or if you're not quite sure what it is, it's basically the belief that Democrats are satanic pedophiles that go in and they kill and sexually assault children and drink their adrenochrome. I know, insanity, not a lick of truth to it, but there are people that unfortunately believe it. Now, as far as Pete is concerned, I got a bunch of critiques for him. None of them have anything to do with a sexual preference, him being a gay man, or anything like that. And so, if we only lived into a world where none of this actually mattered, where you had critiques on policy, I wish we lived in that world. Unfortunately, no, we live in a world where Marjorie Taylor Greene is the voice, a very important voice of a major political party. All right. Outer spaces. Oh, you guys, I need a laugh today. I need a laugh today. Thank you so much for that. I've poured back to my chat. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's to be expected. I do have DC sex parties as my as part of my title, so, and not surprised. Mods, you know what to do. All right, give you a quick update on the truckers. What was supposed to be a bang of a protest ended up ending on a whimper. The so-called People's Convoy recently announced that it was time to pack up and go home. To which I say, of course, womp womp. Sad. Co-organizer of the American trucker protest, Mike Landis, announced on Sunday that the group has decided to pack up its things in the coming days and drive back to California. He said during a recent, I guess, speech or announcement, "So what I want to know is, what do you think about heading to California?" "Sounds like a great plan," one convoy goer yelled back. Okay, so that's how they're doing things. Fun. Now, Landis further said that convoy goers who remain posted up in Hagerstown, Maryland, who have experienced many freezing nights while camped out in the small town an hour and a half north of D.C., will enjoy a southerly route back to California. "We're going to take a little more southern route, so it's a little warmer than this." He then pledged to come back and finish the job in the metro area at some unspecified time in the future, which, of course, press X to doubt will never happen. Sure, Jan. Sure. Yes, the truckers, they're going to come back. Yes, of course, yes. Now, this announcement comes after lead organizer Brian Braze fled Hagerstown over some drama that's happening within the group, to which, of course, he replied, "I'm not running away. I'm not running away." In a speech, he's told the crowd on Saturday night, "Yes, I'm not running away, even though I'm running. I'm out of here, gone. Going away." Sad, baby. Now, look, I mentioned there's some drama, and so let me give you a little bit of that. Over the past 3 weeks, the convoy had struggled to gain traction with any lawmakers in Washington, meeting with only Senator Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson, and a handful of insane House Republicans. No Democrats met with them because why would you? First of all, their demands are no more mandates for vaccines and masks, which we never had federal mandates to begin with. So, there's that. Why would you meet with them? And then, of course, why would you meet with people who think you're Satan? I mean, I'm just saying, like, okay, how did you think that would go? Really? Oh, they need to hear the demands of the people. And what's going to happen if those are the so-called representatives of the people that spout off a bunch of insane anti-vax QAnon nonsense? Come on. Of course nobody would meet with that. I mean, again, you can't get rid of mandates that don't exist. Was there an issue to get federal mandates for vaccine and masks? There was, and it didn't work. So they didn't work. They're not there. It didn't exist. And in fact, you have a lot of places that had mandates that have been rolled back in many different cities. And so again, you have a situation where these just don't exist. And we're winding down anyway because the COVID numbers had in some way wind down, at least after the surge of Omicron. And so, look, by the way, we still do have deaths from COVID-19 going on. They're mainly among the unvaccinated. So, there's that. But back to the trucker protests, right? So look, it's obvious that they weren't welcome there. They've been hilariously trolled by average DC residents, flipping them off. I did that story. One of their convoys were blocked by a bicyclist, blocking traffic better than they ever could. But look, the real thing, as hilarious as that was, the real problem is that they didn't have a goal. They didn't know what they were doing. And so they just kind of fractured. And that's it. During the final week in Hagerstown, 2 of the medics left and they began to factionalize over those who between those who believed the convoy was corrupt and those who thought it was not corrupt. So at the end of the day, you had no morale. The money had dried up. The $2 million that was raised for the convoy was eaten up by fuel and supply costs for them driving around the Beltway aimlessly for days. And so what do you got left? You got nothing. And by the way, the only people that they helped out were Shell and ExxonMobil by them having to buy so much gas or so much fuel. And so, wow, well done. And that's while the press, the media, for the most part, ignored you because there was actual stuff going on. Like, Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Just saying. And by the way, their dumb protest was ignored. I actually think that they should have the right to protest. I never said that they shouldn't. I'm saying that their protest, while they can and definitely should be allowed to, even going so far as to blocking traffic. Yes, I know. Not a popular thing, but if the left can do it, and I've advocated, and said that, hey, look, protests can be pretty uncomfortable. Yeah, well, they can do it. Well, so can the right. There shouldn't be any different rules to protest, so long as you, of course, keep it peaceful. But even though I support the right to protest, I can still say that their protest was dumb. They were not fighting to make life better for average truckers. No, they weren't. There were no demands about wages or benefits or working conditions. No, this is all about fictitious mandates and COVID-19 health measures, which are now very, very weak or in many places completely lifted. So at the end of the day, the protest has broken up. It's going its separate ways. And at this time, next week, everyone's going to forgot that they were ever there. Sad. Also, baby. All right, we got one more story here. Republican Senator Rick Scott is being called out about his own tax plan on Fox News, of all places.
Recently put out an 11-point plan to rescue America. Two of the big points of which are, quote, all Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if a small amount. Currently, over half of Americans pay no income tax. It also says all federal legislation sunsets in 5 years. If a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. So that would raise taxes on half of Americans and potentially sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Why would you propose something like that in an election year?
Sure. Well, John, that's, of course, the Democrat talking points. It's a
No, it's in the plan. It's in the plan.
But here's let's think about reality for a second. First of all, let's talk about Medicare.
But Senator, hang on.
John.
So it's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
It's in the plan. It's there. Look, this is great. Because, I mean, Rick Scott is a shady motherfucker. All right? Rick Scott is like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, you know, this plan is Democrat talking points and anything like that. No, you literally have it written out that they have to have skin, quote unquote, skin in the game. That means paying taxes. Everybody paying federal income taxes. By the way, most people, like at least in states that have an income tax, they pay a state income tax as well. And then, of course, there's sales taxes. And so poor people actually do pay taxes as well. And so sometimes this is not federal. Why? Because they don't make enough money to pay federal income tax. But look, you can read the plan for yourself. Guess what? John Roberts actually did. And was like, actually, no, you do have tax increases on working class people, the poor and the middle class. It's in there. It's not a Democrat talking point. So let me give you the details on that before I get to more making fun of Rick Scott. The Tax Policy Center estimated that more than 80% of the tax increase in Rick Scott's plan would be paid by households making about $54,000 or less. I think half of all Americans only make like $30,000 a year. And 97% of that would be paid by those making about less than $100,000. So look, the rich millionaires, billionaires, they're essentially untouched by Rick Scott's plan. Well, you know why? Because those are the donors. Of course, his plan doesn't touch the donors. My question is, how dumb does Rick Scott think people are? The people that are watching, his voters. Well, I mean, look, maybe, and this is, I guess, very likely, he's thinking, none of my supporters are going to read the bill. All I have to do is just say that it's a Democrat talking point. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Skin in the game. Yeah, everybody's got to have skin in the game. Yeah. Let's not go after the rich people and have them have skin in the game. Let's go after the poor people. But it's not a tax increase. Oh. Look, here's the thing, though. Rick Scott isn't alone in trying to tax the poor. Look, the Republican Party has been trying this on and off for decades, a long time. So now, that said, on this particular bill, here's Mitch McConnell. He put out a statement pushing back, because it's a midterm, it's election year. Quote, we will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half the American people and sunsets Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. That's okay, but Mitch McConnell, who is a Republican establishment, they do support getting rid of Medicare and Social Security and shifting the burden of taxes away from the very top and pushing it down onto the bottom, onto the working class. Now, look, I think I've talked about over the years, there are ways of chipping away at Medicare and Social Security, trying to push like change CPI to reduce Social Security payments, Medicare payments, privatizing those two programs, giving retirements out to Wall Street. And look, they did this by spreading the lie that, Medicare and Social Security, they're unsustainable. And we've got to, quote unquote, fix them by defunding them. And look, we can do that, but you got to remember that, young people, you're not going to get Social Security. So we might as well just kind of end it now or taper it down or privatize it, whatever, right? But here's the thing about that. If you just lift the tax cap on income, you can fund Social Security for the end of time. Right now, if somebody pays, and the cap was recently raised to $147,000 in this year, if you pay that in Social Security taxes, well, that and by the way, the top 1% gets that like in one day. Then guess what? They don't have to pay any more into the tax. That's it. That's the cap. If you remove that cap or raise it to say like $1 million and make the people at the top pay their fair share in Social Security taxes, then you could sustain the program with no loss in benefits for retirees forever, for the end of time. Now, of course, that does mean raising taxes on the beloved billionaires who, despite claiming to be taxed too much, keep getting obscenely richer. And by the way, as Vanessa Callahan in the chat points out, well, Social Security isn't sustainable, but the ever-increasing military budget, well, that, my friends, is absolutely sustainable. I think that's an excellent point. Best audience in the world, on the internet, or, best audience on internets. And so thank you for that contribution. You're absolutely right. Yes, in fact, the new military budget is $31 billion more than it was. Every year, billions and billions of dollars go into the military-industrial complex, but God forbid, we can't actually do anything to help regular people. We can't have health care. We can't have people retire in dignity. And we're going to constantly try to figure out ways to nickel and dime people while slowly taking away Medicare and Social Security. That's what the Republican Party wants to do. And now, again, they come out and say, oh, no, we're going to protect Social Security and Medicare. We're just going to fix it. But don't worry, it'll be around. And the reason they say that is because it's an incredibly popular program. I mean, Republicans love Medicare and Social Security. Very, very incredibly popular. So if you try to talk about eliminating it, you're going to get pilloried. You're going to get destroyed in the polls. In fact, the last person to have suffered any political consequences for not so much talking about Medicare and Social Security, but about taxing poor people, which is another third rail that people are not in favor of. In fact, overwhelmingly, polls show that the American people want us to raise taxes on the rich, or at least make the rich pay their fair share in taxes. But you remember 2012, Mitt Romney talking about the 47%. Remember that? Oh, 47% of Americans don't pay any income tax because they don't make enough money, right? But to them, they're victims, losers, moochers, leeches, essentially, right? He didn't say that, but he said, believe that they're victims. 47% of Americans. Now, Mitt Romney is about as establishment Republican as you can get. And guess what? That was enough to sink his 2012 campaign. Now, you got Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump. He ran on saying, I'm going to protect Medicare. I'm going to protect Social Security. You're not going to touch Medicare and Social Security. I'll expand Medicare. Yeah, he did talk about expanding Medicare. He didn't, of course, because he was lying. But that's fake populism. Because in the Republican Party, just like around, with all the American people, Social Security and Medicare are incredibly popular programs because they work. They work. And so now, if you go against these programs very publicly, that is enough to basically blow torch your own career. And now, going to Rick Scott, Rick Scott isn't very smart. Either that or he's convinced that his audience isn't very smart, or he thinks, my real audience, it's my corporate donors. My donors that I meet with behind closed doors and secret dinners. This was supposed to be for them. No, nobody was ever supposed to talk about the tax increases. Oh, no. So I think maybe Rick Scott is either stupid or he thinks you're stupid and that you're going to be distracted with all the red meat that was packed into this bill on purpose. I mean, his plan calls for finishing Trump's border wall, which is ridiculous, and declaring that men are men, women are women, and unborn babies are babies, and that the Democrats were going to try to stop them from rigging elections. Either way, look, the Republican Party, the mainstream Republicans, they're not having it. Again, this happened on Fox News. And the reason, of course, they push back is because they know that this message, when it gets out, is going to kill them in the midterms. Democrats, you have an opportunity. Amplify this. You should talk. There should be nonstop Democrat ads against Rick Scott saying, and I've seen some of this, by the way, so they're starting to capitalize on it. The Republican plan is to tax poor people and to take away Medicare and Social Security. The Republicans, they've said it. Rick Scott says, oh no, we're going to have that. Except now there's Democrat talking points, even though it's literally in the plan. Well, keep running on that. Because right now, if you don't find something to run on, Republicans have a good chance of taking back the House and Senate and actually doing something, albeit behind the scenes, to continue to chip away at Medicare and Social Security. Just an FYI. Rick Scott, noted Medicare fraudster, put that in the ads. Oh yeah. He defrauded Medicare as well. So of course, he's one of those Republicans that hates it so much, that hates these programs. Think Biden is thinking about billionaire tax, hope so. Oh yeah, by the way, that is the other thing too. There will be a plan that will be introduced, a billionaire's tax. And that's the right way to go. Awesome. Let's do that. All right. Anyway, that's pretty much all the time I've got today. Let me pull up Twitch, see if I have anything going on here. Any shout outs? No super chats. Sad. Very, very sad day. Yep, no, nothing on Twitch here either. So no bits, subs, or anything like that. Well, those are ways that you can help out the show. Subscribe, bits, subs, and of course, super chats over on YouTube. So, hey, if you like what we're doing, toss me a coin, if you would. Everyone else, please, again, like and share the stream if you haven't already. Check out the videos. Of course, we're going to put them up on Facebook, YouTube as well. Twitch, you can probably just watch the VOD. Let's see. Madi Darno, thank you for that very kind $3. Really, really appreciate that. I'm sorry, $2. $3, what? No, $2. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I did not go and talk about the slap, by the way, because I just don't care. I'm sorry. Rich people slapping rich people just don't care. It's just not a big thing. All right. Oh, Kathleen, thank you for sharing 100 bits. And Rora Sarah Beth, thank you again for the 100 bits. Really, really appreciate it. All right. That's it. Love you all. Thank you. Let me take this sidebar down. Love you all. Thank you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all tomorrow.
will eat your ass.
It's like Sharknado, except with
Please splash.
Obama. Get in a long tube with a bunch of bees.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.